Good evening, everybody. I'm Jamie Farr. I'm the superintendent of the Canandaigua City School District. And as I stated just a minute or so ago, this forum will really focus on our nickname, the Braves, and a little bit of our symbol and logo, the friendship belt and the arrow. And hopefully I can bring people up to speed and up to date as to where everything stands. As always, a couple reminders if you're newer to these forums. One would be save all questions until the very end, please. I'm kind of solo. I'm doing this by myself, so it's easier for me to not have to scroll back. And I likely will answer a number of the questions throughout the presentation. The other thing you'll see is occasionally I'll look at my cell phone. I have a few people watching who, if something doesn't come across clearly or the technology is glitching, they'll let me know so I can repeat things. That way nothing is missed or misunderstood. So without further ado, I'm going to jump in and share my screen because that is where the presentation lies. And again, there will be time at the end for any questions that you might have. So hopefully you can see my screen, and it's a kind of a picture collage with our school vision. And so that's, just the entry page, but let's jump right in and bring you up to speed. So we did have a forum on this topic not too long ago, and I want to kind of share with you what has happened since the last time we had a forum on this topic. So the forum that I last hosted was on February 16th. Since then, I've actually reached out to a Haudenosaunee faith keeper with a request to take our case in front of the Grand Tribal Council, which really represents all the nations of the Haudenosaunee, for consideration. And I was really transparent with that request in that I shared with them the letter that Seneca Nation of Indians President Armstrong had shared when I made the request of him. And given SNI President Armstrong's stance on the situation, the faith keeper opted to defer to the president's statement on it, and certainly did not want to overrule or overstep his bounds and take it to a grand council when the SNI president wasn't willing to do such. So we understood that, but I felt it was a step I needed to take to try to get an answer and try to have our case considered. Right around March 23rd, I began communicating with, there's actually 5 school districts in the state of New York that are nicknamed the Braves. And so there was some rumor coming around about, what might or might not be acceptable from the state education department's viewpoint. And so I reached out to a few of the schools that I knew were named the Braves and just kind of engaged in a conversation about what were they hearing, what were they doing, what was the sentiment in their community. And we began working together and advocating for our situations to be looked at individually and to have dialogue with somebody at state education around our situations. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but what I'm comfortable to share now is we haven't had much success in that endeavor. In fact, we've since March 23rd been speaking regularly, had multiple communications with them even today. So anyway, that was one thing that we've been doing. On April 18th, the state education department did pass the regulation unanimously, and it went into effect on May 3rd. So it wasn't, I watched the Board of Regents where they approved it, and it was not on the agenda, but it was somewhere within the consent agenda items. It was approved, and the state has communicated out that it has been approved. And then on April 21st, I sent a communication to our entire community explaining that the regulation was approved and kind of talking about what was in that regulation that maybe was different from the draft regulation. I'll reference that actually right now. So also since then, our stakeholder committee has reconvened. We did that last week, actually, and we spent time looking at 3 documents and talking about those 3 documents, and then working on some surveys. And I'll talk about the surveys shortly, but I want to talk first about these 3 documents that you see on the screen. The first one was the actual New York State regulation. And now the regulation also has comments from the comment period and the district stance, not the districts, the state education department stance on those comments. So in reading the regulation, really the only big changes were two things, in my opinion, and based on what I'm reading. One would be that Indigenous people's imagery around school campuses would be okay so long as it's used as an educational item. So what I've shared with our community is, for example, in our primary and elementary school entrance in the link, there is a massive mural of the creation story, the Haudenosaunee creation story, and all of our kindergartners are taught that story every year. It is part of our curriculum. It is an educational piece that can stay. It doesn't need to come down. So there was some clarification made in this regulation about that. And SED said that was never the intent to remove those things. And so they're clarifying it, while at the same time they didn't feel like they really needed to, because that was never the intent. The other piece in the draft regulation, it had originally stated that school administrators had to manage people on our campus wearing apparel of our former name, and not allow people to wear apparel of our former name, which would have been really challenging and not something we were interested in doing. They scaled back that expectation a little bit, and what they had indicated in the actual regulation is any school employees or school officials, like board members or approved volunteers, they cannot wear our former gear. They have to wear new apparel. And we don't know when that starts. The law went into effect May 3rd. The board has to adopt a resolution saying that they're committed to moving away from the name by the end of this year. And then we have to move completely away from it by the end of 24-25 school year. But we don't know when that you can't wear the apparel on campus if you're a school official or a school employee will begin. My assumption is it'll either be July 1st or September 1st. There is a guidance document coming out with a frequently asked questions segment. And we were just informed today that we could expect that to come out next week. And what I'm hearing right now is it doesn't have a lot of new information. So, I really don't know. I'll be looking out for that. And as soon as we have it, we'll share it with the community so you're aware of that. But we, again, spent time reading this document and discussing, what were the takeaways and what are the differences? And those are the main differences. We also looked at a news article that was out of Albany. And as you can see in this image, their main photograph was our Brave Stadium, even though this article is out of Albany. But I'll talk a bit about that and show a piece of that in a minute. And we also talked about this letter that the New York State Education Department's Mascot Advisory Committee sent to a few districts that go by Braves, who made a request to retain the name Braves. And they wrote some things in there that I thought was pretty important for the stakeholder committee to see, and I wanted to point out to you. So the first one is on this slide from the Albany Times article, and I've highlighted it. This is directly from the New York State Education Department. They said, they're quoted as saying, the department does not anticipate that any team names, logos, or mascots that contain vestiges of prohibited team names, logos, and mascots will be considered acceptable. And so that was at the very end of the article, the last quote used. And I don't know if people picked up on what this is saying, but this is this impacts us, or at least impacts some options that we thought we might have. Furthermore, a few districts felt like they had some tribal approval, but it wasn't somebody from the tribe that had authority to approve it, or they felt like they had some really collaborative relationships with some tribes, and their land bordered tribal land, and they tried to make the request to retain the name Braves to this advisory committee of the State Education Department. And they all, because as I said, the 5 districts named Braves have been working together. They shared these letters with each other, and they all reflected the same. And I highlighted a part from that letter that I think, again, is very relevant and we need to be aware of. It said team names such as the Braves or permutations of that name that are substantially similar, such as Brave. And then I kind of skipped down to the bottom here. They indicate that they believe it's in violation of the Dignity for All Students Act that is in law for the state. So these two items specifically, our stakeholder group talked about and really evaluated what the intent and what we believe SED is clearly saying, and that is this: according to SED, the name Brave or a vestige will not be approved by SED. They've explicitly said that they believe it's a vestige of a name that is now not allowed, and we need to move away from it entirely. And the reason I share that is when we first heard that, we may need to make a change to our name, what I heard a lot from the community was, we'll just drop the S and focus on brave and bravery. We have a VA hospital that it borders our property. We're proud of it. We have a lot of talk about brave individuals that served our country. And then, we've gone on and on about our history in Canandaigua and all the brave acts that have happened here in Canandaigua. And we've talked about our first responders and our police and, all the people we have such great relationships with and how it makes so much sense to be the brave. But this was kind of a surprise that we didn't really think would happen, but the state has made a stance on it. And so now we're looking, if we can't be a brave, what can we be? What could we consider as our next nickname? And then later down the road, mascot, logo, things like that. But let's really focus on our nickname now. And I say that, but I'll also talk a bit about logos and mascots shortly. So what then the stakeholder group committee did was, after we talked about those documents and really kind of digested it, we started thinking about how do we go about really giving our community a voice in this decision, that it's not a decision of the stakeholder group, the superintendent, the board. We want this to be a community decision that decides where we go next. And we wanted to be thoughtful about that process. So we really talked about the merits of consecutive surveys that narrows the focus each time to our final destination. And so what that will look like is a series of 3 surveys. The first survey will be released tomorrow at 3 p.m. and it'll run until next Wednesday at 3 p.m. It will allow any of our secondary students, our staff, our families, our community members, and our alumni that maybe don't even live here any longer, but they really, have a lot of pride in Canandaigua that they want to weigh in on. They can all weigh in. And then also people can offer suggestions. So what you're going to find in the first survey is our stakeholder group has been listening. I've been getting a lot of suggestions from community for months. I've been compiling all of those. Our stakeholder group has been listening and compiling what they've been hearing. We listed all the names we've been hearing, and there was around 40 or so. And we literally put them up on a board. And then we started talking about each one and the pros and cons of each one, and which ones were we hearing more often than others. And we narrowed that list down to 11 names. And so on that first survey, you're going to see those 11 nicknames that we've narrowed the list down to, of the ones that we've heard the most of, or that generated the most intrigue or interest. And so what you'll do in that survey is you'll look at the list of 11 and you can identify any of the ones you like. So it doesn't have to be just one. You could say, I like all 11, or I like 5 of them. You can click on them and identify and select them. And then if you have an idea for a name that you don't see listed, there'll be an area where you can submit a name that you don't see listed. So what we'll do is we'll compile all the results from that survey. Our stakeholder committee will return together and we'll look at those 11 that we listed to kind of determine which ones were the most popular. And then we'll look at the names that have been suggested by the community as well that maybe weren't in that top 11. We'll discuss the merits of those and see if any of those are worthy of being brought into the mix. And we'll come out with a second survey. And instead of having 11 choices, maybe now it's narrowed down to 7. Which would be maybe 4 or 5 of the original 11, plus a few others that people have suggested that are interesting and that have merit and should be included. And again, we'll have people select maybe their 3 favorite. They'll select their 3 favorite. We'll compile that data. The stakeholder group will again look at the results and narrow it further. Maybe now we're down to 5, and we'll then go back out for a 3rd survey and ask people to pick their top choice. And the top choice will be the name that the district selects. There are some things we need to be cautious about. And I want to point out first, we do want our primary and elementary school students involved in this process, but it's difficult because the surveys, while they're on our website, they're linked to our students through their email addresses. And we know our primary and elementary school students aren't using or even know that they have a school email address. So we do have a mechanism to bring them into the fold so they can vote in that third survey. But beyond that, all of our students will be involved. The secondary students will be involved in every single round. And I'd also say when it comes to our nickname and eventual mascot logo, et cetera, we have to be cautious about trademarks and copyright laws, because sometimes, districts or even universities and colleges have selected names that then later they've discovered is a copyright or trademark violation, and then they have to change it again shortly down the road. And we don't want to be in that situation. So some of the names that are suggested, or even some of the names they might see in the 11 that I'll show you shortly, may be discovered to be off limits because of trademark or copyright issues. We don't know that for certain yet. It's a lot of, we need some legal involvement to determine those things, but we're going to be thoughtful along the way. And if we discover that maybe something that people really liked is off limits because of copyright or trademarks, then we have to move on to that next favorite thing. And so that's where the stakeholder committee is going to be really integral in helping to have that dialogue and to steer those conversations as we pare it down. And they've been incredibly helpful along the way. So anyway, moving along, there's 3 surveys. And if all goes as planned, the reality is by the end of June, we would have a new nickname that we'd be aware of. And that would afford us an opportunity to start doing some rebranding around the campus over the summer. It wouldn't be complete, but it would allow us to do some. And as I've said previously, if I start receiving feedback that this feels too fast or rushed, we can tap the brakes and slow it down. It's completely understandable. But we feel like at least I'm receiving a lot of feedback from people. And, I think while a lot of people are maybe upset or disappointed that we have to change our name from Braves, I think people have been reasonable in understanding that if we do, here's some ideas that I think are acceptable or are good or honorable. And so, hopefully we can make that decision by that June 21st timeframe. How we're sharing this survey, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Well, it's on here. So this next slide. We'll be sharing it with all of our families, so parents and guardians, students and staff through Parent Square. That'll be released at 3 p.m. tomorrow. The actual survey will be on our website. Under, as you may know, you've probably gone on there, we have an entire page dedicated to this topic, and the survey is there. It will be live tomorrow at 3 p.m. So our staff, students, and parents, guardians will receive a Parent Square message tomorrow at 3. You can do it on your smartphone or on a computer. It's easy to do on both, very easy to do on both. And then everybody else, maybe a community member that is no longer a parent here, or just a community member that doesn't have children or never had children here, but care about this topic, or alumni that are maybe living across the country, they can go on our social media platforms and take the survey. We'll post them there. Right now, I just want to make the disclaimer, for some reason, the district Facebook page has been locked up by Facebook. We've reported the problem, but there's not a resolution at this point. And we know a lot of families rely on our Facebook page. So please help spread the word that go to our website, go to our other socials to access the survey. One way I want to control the survey so that we know the data is valid is to sort the results by our known folks. So in other words, our staff, students, and parents/guardians, we know who you folks are because you've submitted email addresses to us. So we can filter that group off and see the results of that group and compare it to the other general results, and they should be fairly well aligned. So if they're aligned, we know it's valid and a viable feedback that we're getting through the survey. And we believe that will be true. I don't think it'll be a big big concern. So again, as a reminder, the first survey tomorrow at 3 p.m. It runs until Wednesday at 3 p.m. So the thought process behind that was running it like that. It's not running for too long where people forget about it. It touches a weekend and a piece of 2 weeks. So the end of this week and the beginning of next week and the weekend. So that should give everyone sufficient time to have their voices heard. So please weigh in and have your voices heard. And also keep in mind, it's 3 different surveys. So you as an individual, we want you to do every survey, all 3 of them, because it's a narrowing process where we're narrowing the choices. So each time you want your voice heard. We believe that if you respond to the first survey, you will have to submit your email address so we know that multiple responses per email address aren't happening. We'll collect those email addresses, and let's say 7,000 people respond to the first survey. We can push that second survey to those same people, so it's a little bit easier to see. And so that's kind of our thought process. Anyway, we're trying to make it accessible for everybody. So this next page, I'm a little bit hesitant to show you, and we've had a lot of debate about whether or not we should show it tonight. But ultimately, we decided to move forward with showing you the next page. And here's why. Number one, I've referenced that the stakeholder committee narrowed the ideas and the names down to 11 from 40 or so that we've heard commonly. I'm about to show you those 11 names. And I want to offer this disclaimer, and I'm going to do it many, many times because I know people may not remember or hear me, but it's important that you hear this. You will see the names and you will see concepts for logos. That does not mean it's our final logo. The logos have not been decided. The mascots have not been decided. The names have not been decided. These are just the ones we're commonly hearing that had a lot of interest and merit. And we created potential ideas and concepts for logos because what we've determined as a stakeholder group is seeing these concepts helps us make decisions and discuss it better. We're more informed. It offers a perspective that without it, it's hard to imagine for some people. And so, for example, when we were talking about these choices, we actually did a couple test surveys with the stakeholder group to see kind of what their favorite was. And in doing that process, I then asked them, did these 1 or 2 kind of rise to the top because you saw the logo, you saw this image, and it kind of put that image in your mind? And they all admitted that, yeah, the image, they liked it, and it was powerful in helping them make their decision. And so that's why we've decided to share at least these initial 11 ideas with strictly a concept for what the logo could look like. But what we will be doing once we have a nickname is we will form another committee that will really dive into the mascot and logo and help design that with professional help, with community input, so forth and so on. So again, these are just concepts. These are not finalized or formal at all. And before I show it, I know you want to see this screen. Stay with me because I'm going to do my best to just give you a brief description of why why did these ones stand out? And so stay with me. Here we go. The moment of truth. So this is what we talked about with our group. We listed the names. There was about 40. We really discussed them in great detail and pared them down. And then we just did some concept logos to give us an idea of what it might look like and try to think about it. We would tell ourselves, say the name, like, pretend you're at commencement, pretend you're at a sporting event, pretend you're, somewhere where you might say the name. How does it sound? How does it feel? Imagine wearing apparel with this on you. What does it feel like? How does it sound? And, I'd ask you all to do the same thing because it really helps give you a clearer vision and feeling for it. And so, for example, Canandaigua, I've heard it multiple times, people saying, you've said it, Mr. Farr, we're proud of Canandaigua. We don't need a nickname. We don't need a mascot. We really haven't had a mascot since 2001 anyway. Let's just be Canandaigua. And so a concept for a logo for that might just be our Block C with the year that we were founded, 1791. So, and because I'm suggesting or throwing out or showing a Block C, I want people to be clear around the fact of we're not doing away with the CA. The CA, Canandaigua Academy, will always remain. But what people sometimes miss or don't think about is CA references Canandaigua Academy. The original Canandaigua Academy in 1791 was really that upper level, that 9 through 12 grade building. And so a lot of times CA only references our academy, 9th through 12th graders. What about our middle school? What about our primary elementary school? What about our alternative school? And so that Block C would be encompassing of all of them, but the academy could still use the CA. So that would be Canandaigua with no nickname. Canandaigua Bears. The name Bears really has all the same letters as Braves except for the V. Drop the V, rearrange some letters, and you have Bears. And so this was kind of a logo for Bears and thinking about the different levels. So maybe the primary and elementary school kids are the Cubs, and then the secondary age kids are the Bears. And you know, you talk about kind of traits that Bears are known for: their strength, their stability, things like that. And so there'll be more detail about all of these in the survey that you'll see tomorrow. So I'm just giving a quick overview. Canandaigua Big Red. There was a long time ago at games, a prominent community member used to yell, "Go Big Red," and there'd be a cheer that would go along with that. And this is dating decades and decades of time where people would do that. And so when you think Big Red, a lot of people here would think Cornell and Big Red and the Bears. And so we were careful in thinking about kind of maybe possible copyright and trademark issues. And so do you do Big Red with a lake monster? And so that's just a concept. That's an idea. It doesn't mean that's the way we're going, but just trying to think creatively and think of concepts. And so that's kind of Big Red, really, really a nod to those cheers they used to do at sporting events, and they would yell, "Go Big Red." Canandaigua Bison. I think, you know, as we know, a lot of people in Canandaigua and Western New York are big Buffalo Bills fans. And so I think that was kind of maybe their heart with Buffalo Bills saying maybe Canandaigua Bison, but it's an interesting concept and a pretty cool logo. Another one is Canandaigua Cardinals, thinking about kind of Cardinals are native to our area. They have the coloration that fits with our cherry and gray nicely. Cardinals are known to be loyal and fierce. And so there's some interesting concepts around the Cardinals, and it kind of flows, Canandaigua Cardinals. So that's one. I've received, even today, I received number 6 as a recommendation, the Canandaigua Cherry and Gray. Prior to 1949, when we became the Braves, we were known as a few different things. And one of those things was the cherry and gray. They just referred to Canandaigua as the cherry and gray. And so some people are thinking maybe that's plenty. Maybe it's already who we've always been. So something worth considering. And so that's what that would look like. And we threw in a Block C logo there as well, with the colors cherry and gray. And so again, another interesting and neat idea. As I referenced, some people early on said, you know, can we be the Brave? And when I did my last forum and did a piece of writing that indicated we probably can't be the Brave, I had a lot of people reaching out and saying, another word for brave is courage. Canandaigua Courage, it kind of sounds good together. And then you'll see with this logo, we went with kind of a crest. As I've shared in a previous forum, we used to have a crest a long, long time ago. Early 1900s, we had a crest that looked a lot like this. And in it had a variety of things. You see a crest down below for pride with that 1791 book. That was what was in it originally, that 1791 book. So do you become the Canandaigua Courage, and which stands for bravery, and have that crest? Number 8 was a really interesting idea that came from an alumni that no longer lives in the area, but I don't know if there's a bigger fan. He just is really involved and invested in the community. And he threw out this idea of a nod to our history and being called the Canandaigua Hilltoppers. And the idea was that it would be in reference to Fort Hill. And Fort Hill is the area where Canandaigua Academy was originally founded in 1791. And it's where we've kind of been centrally located all along, that Fort Hill area. And if you think about the topography of our area and the geography of our area, and you think about the lake, Main Street, and the lake that kind of flows down, all of our school buildings are up on the hill. And so being the Canandaigua Hilltoppers might be a nod to our foundation where we started in the Fort Hill area. Kind of a neat idea. I know the Finger Lakes Community College is the Lakers, but a long time ago when people were looking at names for the Canandaigua City School District, Lakers was one of the finalists. And I've heard a lot of people bringing it up again. And when you think about places like Ithaca, where Cornell's the big red and Ithaca's the little red, Ithaca Central City School District, this would be something similar, that Finger Lakes Community College is the Lakers, and they have a lake monster as their mascot, but maybe we're also the Lakers and we use an anchor as our mascot. Just an idea that people have shared that I think has some merit. We've talked about over and over again that what we're really proud of is Canandaigua and our rich, deep history. Again, I've referenced Canandaigua is one of the 10 oldest continuously running school systems in the country. And so there's a lot to be proud of. And so some people suggested the Canandaigua Pride. And when I hear that, I think about like Hofstra University. That's their nickname, the Hofstra Pride. I also know that I think it's Bloomfield and Honeoye combined with some sports, and their nickname is the Pride. So that, that might be problematic, but it's just something to think about. Another one, number 11, is Canandaigua Waves. It rhymes with Braves. We have a lake. There's oftentimes waves on it. And another interesting piece about this is in the anthem, when it comes to the end and everybody yells Braves, the line before it is the word wave. It'd be an easy transition. So these are the 11 most, or I shouldn't say most commonly stated. Many of them are the most commonly stated, but a few of them were just things we hadn't thought about that were interesting, like the Hilltoppers, for example. That was only recommended by one person, but boy, when we brought it up with the stakeholder committee, there seemed to be a lot of interest in at least exploring it and putting it out there for people to think about. So anyway, those were the 11 that the stakeholder group narrowed it to. And then 12, like I said, on the survey, there will be an area where you can submit further suggestions. And so let me just kind of talk you through some of the discussion and examples of what we did in the stakeholder committee. So that list was maybe of 40 long of different ideas, names, nicknames, and things like that. And we started kind of narrowing it. I should say all of these names that you see on the screen right now would be unique in Section 5, other than Pride with the Bloomfield and Honeoye team. Otherwise, no other school has any of these names. They would be unique to Canandaigua, which is kind of nice. But, we started looking through that list, and a name that was even recommended to me again today, I want to use as an example, and I hope nobody finds this offensive if you like the name, but I just want to, kind of talk you through it. So someone said, we should be the Canandaigua Coyotes. And so there's, it sounds cool. They're native to our area. Sure, not a problem at all. There's a lot of reasons why that might be good. But then we started talking about what do people generally think of when they think of coyotes? And so things like, sometimes they have rabies. If you think about, for those of you who are my age or older, you're thinking about the Roadrunner and Coyote episodes, and the Roadrunner was always outsmarting the Coyote. So maybe the Coyote isn't very smart. And so when we started thinking about those things, we thought, well, maybe that's not what we want representing us, and we pulled it off. And so those are the types of conversations we were having about all the different names that were suggested, trying to think about pros and cons and does it hold up over time. But if people want to offer suggestions, there'll be also an area where you can describe why you're offering that suggestion. So tell us about this idea. And as I told the person today who recommended coyotes again, I said, if you have reasons that maybe we didn't think through that we ought to think about, please resubmit and provide details as to why this might be a good name for us to consider, and we will consider it. So what I anticipate doing is on that second survey, trying to find the top 4 or 5 from this list and some of the top, maybe 3 or 4 of suggestions that people submit for that second survey for consideration to continue to narrow it down. And so again, I'm going to emphasize it another time. These logos are not finalized. They're just ideas to give people a visual to help you start thinking about what it might or could look like. Or maybe you even have a better idea. My guess is, as a community, we're going to come up with even better ideas in the end for logos, mascots, or even potentially names. So this is where it is. What will happen in the survey? You will see a list of all 11 of these names plus a box to enter suggestions. When you see these concept logos, if you scroll over them or tap them, a description will pop out. Kind of what I just explained, but even a little more detail and probably with more clarity. So you can read it and understand why these names or these nicknames were something that kind of rose towards the top. So please, 3 p.m. tomorrow, look through that, be thoughtful through the process and chime in and weigh in on how you truly feel about, what name we should choose moving forward. And so lastly, I just want to thank everybody. I'll be the first to admit this is an incredibly hard and emotional work that we need to do as a community. I understand there's allegiance and tradition and history that people believe so strongly in with this name. And I'm going to do my very best to lead this process with professionalism, with dignity, and truly listening to what you all have to say as we go through the process. I want this to be a community decision. I want to look at this as an opportunity to really create a new nickname, a new logo, a new us that will be generations to come. And I think together is the best way to do that and to rally around. So again, I'm going to thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I see I have some questions popping in. So I'm going to pull those up now, kind of read through them and answer them as I can. So the question is about primary elementary school students. Will they be able to vote in at each school? So the primary and elementary students will be able to vote in that final round, and it will happen at school. We do want their input, and that'll be in the final round. Will the offsite UPK students have a chance to vote as well? That will be challenging because we have no avenue to allow that to happen. And so for any families that might have really young kids, by all means, engage in conversation with them. Maybe they're part of your vote as a parent or as a community member, but please, have dialogue along those lines. Marty, okay. Yep. Marty, if you still have questions, let me know. But I think it appears as though I answered your question according to what you wrote. So a suggestion is the Canandaigua Waves could also be the wave. We have all kinds of different concept logos. The one we showed just a simple wave, but another one that was created is our Block C. In the top of it is a wave. It really is pretty neat. That was actually created today as a concept. Question about Big Red possibly having Native American connotation. There's certainly those potential roadblocks we might run into, and I thank you for that question. A lot of this is unknown, but currently Big Red in terms of Cornell, we know that Nebraska has a trademark on the name Big Red, but we don't know if it would prohibit us from using it. The places I know that use Big Red have no Native American connections, but that doesn't mean there might not be that I'm not aware of. Marty, you asked about a bit of the description with the survey, and I hope I made that clear, and I apologize if I didn't. But each logo, again, concept logos, they're not decisions. Each concept logo, if you click on it or scroll over it, there'll be a 2 or 3 sentence description for each item as to why people suggested it and why they liked it. So I hope that's sufficient and that makes sense. Hey, Mike, I did show the time frame for all of the surveys with we'll make the decisions after the final survey. If that wasn't clear on that screen, just give me a call. I think you have my cell phone number. Give me a call and I'm happy to talk you through it a little bit more. Is there a list of names that have been ruled out? We do have that, but here's the reality. As a stakeholder committee, we talked about the names from our perspective. I want to use that Coyote example. We talked about it in the two perspectives that I just explained, but maybe somebody submitting it thinks of it in a different way that we didn't think of. And so just because we ruled it out doesn't mean it isn't worth reconsideration. So please, I'll throw out another one, and I'll throw out two of them, deer and bucks. We've heard those suggestions. We've seen really cool logos for those. And we debated them for a while, and we pulled it. We pulled it from being considered for a variety of reasons. And so, certainly we could reconsider it if people believe passionately in it. We personally just felt like it maybe didn't flow well. And one of the names, when people are cheering, might sound like something different that we wouldn't want people yelling. I'll just leave it at that. Most of you can figure out what I'm trying to say. A community education on why this is a good thing to further understanding. And so I think what you might be asking is community education as to why we need to change our name from the Braves. If that's what you mean, please let me know, because I've done a few written pieces on this and a few webinars on this where we've referenced it. The real brief version is many indigenous peoples feel that using their heritage as a mascot, as a nickname, is degrading and inappropriate. While some people in our community feels as though Canandaigua has been attempting to be honoring the past and respectful, and there's probably some strong arguments for that, there are other communities where it is disparaging and cartoonish and a mockery, and it's hurtful. And it's hard to separate. It's hard to separate that. If it's not okay in one community, perhaps it's not okay in the other. I've tried to make the case that I feel like Canandaigua, because of Canandaigua being where life began, according to the Haudenosaunee, that maybe it's important to have that constant reminder and imagery from the Haudenosaunee perspective. And even SNI President Armstrong, Seneca Nation of Indians President Armstrong, shared that even amongst his membership, they're very divided on this topic, where half believe it's very offensive and inappropriate, and some are kind of indifferent, and some think it's honoring. And so, they have even a hard time making a stance on it because their own membership is divided. I apologize, because I'm not sure if that's what you were asking, and if I gave enough information to help with that, or would you like to, I'd talk to you privately about it if you'd like, even. Canandaigua waves, we could do the wave in the crowd at games. It was another suggestion. How do we fund this change? So right now, I don't know. I think we need to find out what's in the guidance document. I'm hoping that in there it says you have to make the changes through normal course of maintenance. So for example, when the stadium turf field needs to be replaced, that's when you'd make the change. And so there'd be no kind of unexpected now cost for it. I'm hoping it says that. If not, we're just going to, we are going out to the community with a spending plan. We're going to have to figure out how to allocate the money that the community hopefully will approve us spending to doing some of this work over time. This person is just indicating, and I don't mean to say just, but it's clearly someone that believes we should be the Braves and not have to change, and how that making us change it is a violation of our constitutional right to be this name. All I can say to that is I won't be surprised if there's litigation around this topic in New York State. Personally, I feel like the New York State Education Department overstepped when they said we couldn't be the Brave. And I've made that known. I've made that abundantly clear, not because I think we should be the Brave, but because I think our community deserves the right to decide that. And right now, I think the state has overstepped on that. And as I said, I made that clear, but this is where we are at this moment. And we'll continue to try to find clarity and to advocate. I was on the phone with one of our elected officials last Friday, talking about this very topic and my feelings on that matter. Okay, so the person that I just explained to why this might be a good thing to change our name, it looks like I answered it correctly, and thank you for your kind words. Again, please, if you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk to you further about it. Someone sent a link. Looks like a team changed their name to the Scorpions, and I'm if you want to email that link to me, I'd happy to read that later. When we change things with the new logo and symbol, will the taxpayers absorb the cost? So that's a good question. Again, if it's normal course of maintenance, the way public education works in New York State and many states, but not all, is it's a combination of funding from local taxpayers, from the state, and from the federal government. In Canandaigua, we get about, I would say between 30 and 40% of our funding, more towards 30% of our funding comes from the state and federal government, and the rest is from the local tax base. If what we have to do is through normal course of maintenance, and we start looking at things like the stadium, turf football field, or start looking even the big Friendship Belt neon sign at the stadium, if we did it through normal course of maintenance and replaced it in a capital project, we receive aid back from the state that covers a good chunk of that money, that cost. So that's my hope, is that we would do it through a combination of state funding through a capital project, and there would be a little bit of an offset from taxpayers. But we're going to do our very best to continue to be mindful of our budgeting and planning so that you don't feel any spike or valley from this cost. Okay, I think I got through all the questions. Oh. The question is saying the turf isn't ready to be replaced yet. Can we keep it as is until absolutely necessary? That's what I'm saying is I don't know. I'm hoping the guidance document will say through normal course of maintenance. Right now, they're saying the change has to be complete by the end of the school year 24-25. And I don't know if that means we have to fully adopt the new name and only go by that, or all imagery has to be removed. If all imagery has to be removed, that means we're likely replacing that turf, at least the end zones where it says Braves. And we could do that. We could replace probably only the end zones, I think. We would be replacing it before it's ready by a couple of years. The reality is it's actually, that turf has been used for 6 going on 7 years. And the typical life frame for a turf is 10 to 12 years. So it's actually over half its lifespan already, which seems wild. It feels like we just opened it, but it is on the later half of its life already. I hope I answered your question. Thank you, Stephanie. Is there a list of area schools that have claimed other names in our region? So I think this question is referring to other schools that have changed their names from an indigenous name to a new name. I don't have a compiled list of that. Locally, we know Waterloo changed from the Indians to the Tigers. I know Red Jackets in the process right now of looking at different names. I know Avon's doing the same. They're also the Braves, and was in close contact with their superintendent again today and have been regularly. They'll be engaging in a process. and there's some others in our area, but I don't have a compiled list of names that have been changed. I have a list of names that exist in Section 5, if that is what you mean. Thank you for the nice words, Don. Can we keep the lit sign and add something above it from the national anthem? I think you mean the friendship belt at the stadium, and maybe remember it lights up and says "Home of the Braves" too. So if we become something new, my intention would be to replace those with something new. And so I'll just use Coyotes. Maybe have a neon Coyote sign where the friendship belt is, and then the home of the Coyotes or something like that. That lights up. So I would look to replace it with who we will be in the future. Sorry, some of these are coming in. Yes, all Section 5 names. I see, Caroline, you're on here watching. Is there a way you can load all those Section 5 logos and mascots onto our website that's dedicated to this topic? She has a visual and we have a list. We'll put that on our website so that you can access it and see it there. You'll see all of the names in Section 5. I know the one that she has with the little logos isn't complete, but we do have a complete list. We'll make sure it's on our website, that's dedicated, the page that's dedicated to this. Yep, it'll be there. I'd expect it to be there sometime tomorrow. So please check it and you'll see that there. Give it another second, see if there's any questions. Might stroll in. I think that's it. Okay, everybody. Thank you so very much. Really appreciate it. Have a great evening. And if you have any questions, please just reach out. Happy to talk to you. Thank you.